Well, good morning. We are having some technical difficulties trying to get Nikki invited here into the call, and she's out and trying to join on her cell phone. So we're going to work to get her back in here as co-host. So good morning, Chelsea. We'll give it a minute or two for people to pop on and join us. And then, you know what, if she's not able to join, then we'll just keep the conversation going with our topic today. Okay, well, on with it. The topic for today is redefining success, like really trying to understand what matters to us in our life. And, if I were to reflect back on my life, this still happens, by the way. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, yeah, sure, I am absolutely never living out of alignment with what I want for myself. I think it's very easy for us to kind of live from these external expectations, whether it is societal expectations, and some of them work in our favor and some do not, whether it's expectations from our families, whether it's just us trying to kind of keep up with the Joneses, if you will, and, taking a look at other people's lives and being like, I want that, and really living out of alignment of what truly matters for us. I think it's a helpful place to take stock and, just be curious about what's working and what isn't. So I'll throw this question out to the group and I'll pay attention to the chat here, but is there an area in your life that you find you're constantly like fighting against expectations, external expectations that don't really align with you, but for whatever reason, you really get pulled back into it? I'm curious to hear what comes up for people. I think for me, I think a lot of it comes down to health, for sure. Like if I look at one thing that I'm constantly pulled back into, it is, what should I look like? What size should I be? And a lot of these expectations come from, what we're being told a woman should look like as we're aging even. Like there's definitely this double standard that I think we experience as women, which is like, you should age gracefully, but not too gracefully. That's a little too much aging, and really trying to fit into this societal expectation of what a woman's body and features and youth should really look like. I certainly get pulled into that more often than I care to admit. So that's a place for me. I'm curious if folks have, identified other places for themselves where they tend to get pulled into some of these things. But, if we're looking at what are some of the challenges that we might face, I think the common ones would be health. It's certainly there. I think career can be a big one. Think about that. Like, have you ever been in a role where the expectation was just constant growth? Like, I got to climb the ladder. I got to get to the next place. I got to get to the next position. I have to make more money. Like I should be making more money based on where I am in time. And maybe it's true, but I think it's interesting to reflect on, are these shoulds or are these our deepest, truest desires? Being busy, I think that's something else that can pop up in our career. Like busyness equals worthiness. And then we really run ourselves into the ground, doing that. I think another one is how available we are. So this was a conversation that we had amongst a group of women that I was doing a 2-day conscious habit retreat with last week, where we were going through the conscious habit framework. We were talking about how different generations have different expectations of what being loyal looks like. And there are certain generations that feel like it is fully time commitment. Like I have to be at the office by 7. I cannot leave until at least 5. If somebody emails me at 8 p.m. on a Saturday, I have to respond. And so those things can be, really unhealthy for us. And I think the reflection of us being like, whose expectations am I living through, is just to do a check-in and see, like, do I feel like I'm chasing? Do I feel like I'm burned out? Do I feel like I'm constantly behind? That could be a real indicator that we are living from somebody else's expectation and not our own. So taking this career piece, some things that come to mind of what we might do is, first of all, I love the question, like if I cared about no one's opinion but my own, if I was not afraid of what the world would think of me, what would I be doing? What would I be doing? How would I spend my time? What would I say yes to? What would I say no to? But specifically in career, I think doing a values exercise is really helpful for us to be fully clear, like what are my top 5 values that if I'm living in alignment with them, I am more likely living in alignment with my own authenticity and what my deepest, truest desires are. So I think values can be incredibly important. And some of my values, by the way, love is a value of mine. Like if I can't operate from alignment with love, then I don't want to be a part of it. If I can't be all in with love, or if love is missing from anything that I say yes to, it is not right for me. Integrity. If it is not aligned with my highest integrity, if I know in my body that there is something off, then that has to be an absolute no for me. No matter what money might be at stake, no matter what title or prestige might be at stake, I know that I have to say no. So really getting aligned with our values. In ways that we can know, it's not just writing them on paper, but getting aligned with the truth within your body. Nikki, I think Nikki's on here. She can't get unmuted. That's just the beauty of technology some days, But I think last week when we were talking, I was on my way to the airport. I don't know how much of the conversation truly came through at that point in time, but I remember we were talking a little bit about bringing the mind, body, and spirit together to find what really aligns with us. And your body knows. Your body, it really does know, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a feeling it's bringing to the table, whether it's a heaviness. There are times where if I feel uncertain about a move in my career, I might sit quietly and just start to notice where my body leans. Does my body lean into this thing, that I'm presenting? Does it lean away from? I think really attuning to the body can help us figure out, what's right and what isn't. And there can be healthy external pressure at times. It can be where I think healthy external pressure looks like I see what's possible based on what someone else has achieved. And, that inspires me. It makes me feel like I can do something. That can be healthy. Where it becomes unhealthy is if we now feel like it's a means of proving, oh, I have to do that so I can prove I'm good enough. I think that's the lens to look from is this an internal motivation or an external validation that I'm seeking? All right. So digging into other areas of life, career is one. I think that's helpful for us to reflect upon, whether it's clients or colleagues or bosses or, whatever the case might be. What is misaligned? What's the expectation? What of that might be misaligned? What would more radical authenticity look like if I was aligned with my own expectations? Back into health. Okay, what are some of the expectations you have of yourself? What works for you and what doesn't? So some external expectations, I think, is being, looking a certain way. Like, how do I look in pictures? How do I, look in my clothes? And really beating ourselves up. I have been, when I was in the best shape of my life, in my certain times in my 30s, I was in killer shape and I could still pick apart all the things that were not right. I could find every dimple. I could find every hair. I did not appreciate it. And I think that's the thing when we're living from external validations is we're chasing something that we will never find real. because we'll just continue to chase something else that's impossible to achieve. Again, whether that's career, health, or family, or wherever it is in life. So common expectations is about, being thin. What size am I wearing? Are there wellness trends? The pressure that we often feel based on all of these trends, like I have to do my red light therapy and I have to drink twice my weight in ounces of water per day. And don't forget the protein. And I've got to incorporate all of these vitamins. And my gosh, now I have to do these peptides. And there's, it's on and on and on. And all of a sudden we have a sink or a counter full of vitamins that we don't even know if we need. I'm talking to myself, by the way, staring at my counter full of vitamins right now. The other thing, I have been guilty of this. I don't know if anybody else has, but I have been like a push harder workout person. I have avoided like slow walks and slowing down and doing yoga more often because it doesn't feel like it counts, because it has to be hard in order for it to count, which is, sometimes that works for me. And sometimes my body is screaming, would you just freaking slow down, woman? Like, for real, take a stretch. Would you just like stroll around the neighborhood and, like watch the flowers? How about sniff them every once in a while? So I think it's, as I'm reflecting, health is the one that I really want to do the most digging into for myself, post this conversation today. But okay, so looking at the common expectations, what might be misaligned? Is there any shame that might be created around some of these expectations? I know there is for me. There's certainly shame that's come into play. Is there any shoulds, coulds, woulds, gottas, have tos that creep in? Does it feel like a burden, where it just feels so overwhelming? And here's the check-in that I am going to certainly do with myself, but I'm encouraging other people to reflect on too. There are times that our feelings are temporary and we really just need to get our body or our mind into a new state, in order to activate some of those new feelings. But there's also a time for us to reflect upon if the feelings come up often and over when we're initiating certain activities that's telling us something. And I think sitting and paying attention to what that is helpful. Similarly to, the career piece, just listening to your body. Listening to our body when we're eating, even, how often do we eat undistracted without a phone in front of our face or email, where we're just fully present with the chewing, the taste, the texture, noticing when our body feels satisfied and, being able to be truly attuned to what it is that our body needs to nourish ourselves or to move our body. When we're in workouts, is this feeling better? Do I feel stronger? Or am I pushing myself to a place that it's okay to push our comfort zone, but it's not great when we're pushing ourselves into pain. There's a difference between discomfort and pain, but just honoring and listening and being curious, finding things we love about ourselves when we see those pictures and we instantly go, oh my God, I hate that angle. I look so fat. I can't believe, look at this person. They look better than me, or whatever, on and on of the things that we might tell ourselves. I think it is helpful for us to, provide those reflections of love and figure out what it is that we truly need and we truly want. And then also reflecting back on, where did these expectations come from? Excuse me. Like, are they ones I've given to myself based on external pressure? Did they come from spending too much time on social media and I am dreaming of a life that I think someone else loves, which, by the way, we have no idea what's going on in those people's heads of this life that we've dreamed up is so great and grand and is better than our own. Does it come from maybe family? Maybe we grew up in a household where we were body shamed or we were made to feel bad. Does it come from bullying at a young age? I think it's helpful for us to reflect upon where it came from and begin to work on healing some of those expectations. And ways that we can do that is to coach or talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. Obviously, there's helpful therapy if we really have some deep-seated traumas that we can work on, like EMDR or, CB, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's different forms out there that can be incredibly helpful. But things that we can do for ourselves is just that self-reflection. In that group that I was with last week in Jacksonville, I had these women write a love letter to themselves and speak to themselves with such kindness as if they were talking to their dearest friend or as if they were talking to their daughter, and just pour so much love into themselves. And many of those women said, I have never spoken so kindly to me. Like, I've always been incredibly hard on me and very soft on others. And so when it comes to rewriting some of these expectations, that's part of the process. How do I learn how to love instead of pick? Because that in itself is a habit, and learning how to shift that to love is certainly a more conscious habit that we can adopt. And if we move into, so we've got health and career that we've talked about, I think family. I mean, whether you are single, you're married, you have kids, you don't have kids, wherever you are, is there pressure for that to look a certain way, for your relationship to look a certain way, whether it's look a certain way on social media, whether it's we watch these rom-coms and have these impossible expectations for what relationships look like because, in movies, they love each other deeply all the time. And they accept each other's flaws. There's this utopia that can be created purely for the plot. But these are our lives that we live. And to just know, can we find the joy and the presence and the happiness and satisfaction in the life that we're living right now? Or are we always trying to, get to some place that isn't our current reality? These expectations of a perfectly happy marriage that never has any disagreements. Kids who are perfect and they get the perfect grades and they're the captain of all the sports teams. And, they call us, all the time and we have a great relationship or whatever the case might be. Maybe it's pressure from family members who walk in and think that maybe our house doesn't look like it's supposed to look. Or I had a family member once. I love my house, by the way. I think we have a nice house. A family member who said, God, you should really sell this and get a nicer house. And I was like, wow. Like your need to, impress the world with what you have is being projected on me, and that's not mine to own. So I think that structure of what our life looks like outside of work and our health is so important for us to examine and to recognize, what are we striving for? The things even on our vision board, are those things we truly want for ourselves? Or is that a life we think that we should have based on what we're watching around us? And man, I'm curious. I wish we could go back and pick the brains of people, but prior to social media, and to see what were expectations like. Purely, obviously, there's the neighborhood that you live in and, you see what other people are doing. But I truly think that social media has expanded that in ways that are incredibly unhealthy for us and for our psyche and for the future generation who's always looking at somebody else's life and seeing that as the way that their life is supposed to look like. So whether the expectation is like the marriage, the kids, the picket fence, the perfect balance of life and family, that's a pressure that I hear people put on themselves a ton. Keeping up appearances, right? Do our vacations look just right? Are we going to the right places? Are our kids cultured? All of that stuff. I think the negativity in that is we paint ourselves into a life that we become strangers of because it wasn't really our own life we were striving for, right? It was that acceptance of some external place. And so we begin to suppress our own individuality. We begin to suppress our own dreams. We can certainly lead into resentment and a sense of like, my life is not for me. This is for other people. If we're not careful, if we're not, super conscious and curious about the steps that I'm taking, are they a full body yes? Are they fully aligned again, with my own authenticity. So some things that I think are helpful, back to the values piece, checking in on that and seeing how aligned are you living that within your life. Checking in if you have a partner, I think sitting down with your partner and really learning how to define what success looks like. Is it connection? Is it presence? Is it, respect? Like, what are the defining core values of your relationship? What are the defining core values of your family? What are the defining experiences that you wish to create together, not because you think that you should, but because it's aligned with the life that you're looking to consciously create? And along that way, continue to check in with your body. For many, many years, I started meditating in 2015. Dabbling at first, it was a bit of like, I would jump on the apps. I became a very avid meditator in 2017, where I adopted this twice a day practice. And meditation really helped me better understand the stories I was telling myself in my mind. So if I was caught into suffering, I could catch those stories faster and get myself back to reality, right? Get myself back to presence, get my attention and my awareness, my consciousness back to this present moment. And it was incredibly helpful. But it wasn't until 2021 when I met Maria Luisa, who I've talked about on podcasts in the past, and I've talked about her several times. She was a shaman. What is her title? She was like a Mayan healer. This little Mayan healer in Tulum, Mexico, who I swear to you guys was 120 years old. And I did a Mayan healing massage that every time I tell people about this, I'm like, it was an exorcism. And she pointed out to me, she read me like a book. She got down in my face, like literally nose to nose, and told me, you have to feel your feelings. You have to stop thinking your feelings. And I was like blown away. But by the way, Conscious Habit was started in 2019. Okay. So this was 2021 when she, called me out and said, you cannot think your way through your feelings. And part of that Mayan massage was she did this incredibly painful massage, abdominal massage, and she lit this herb and, kind of ran it along my body. And the minute she had that herb over my heart, I cried harder than I have ever cried in my entire life. It was like all of these emotions I'd been shoving into my stomach were released. And that was such a great lesson of like, the body holds so much wisdom and we often ignore it, right? We ignore the urges that it's sharing with us. We ignore the gut instinct that this is not for me. We ignore the calling to, connect and move with our bodies or to put healthier substances in. We ignore the call of what we want our life to really look like. And so to just sit in stillness and to notice what's coming through, and to notice, does my body lean into this or away from this? That is where we can really make this mind, body, spirit connection in the creation of our life, and how that unfolds in many areas. This is where life wheel that we talk about, Nikki, I know you can kind of hear from your space, but I often share with people just how disciplined you are to that life wheel of drawing out that circle, cutting it into 8 slices, writing out the 8 most important aspects of your life and reflecting on them regularly. And that's such an important place for us to look at. Am I living aligned with my own authenticity? Where does fear, worry, or shame show up for me in these areas? Is it career or health, family, relationships? Is it spirit? Is it in my finances? Is it in, how I serve my community? Like what are the aspects where that might show up? And what would a more radically aligned action look like? What would more radically aligned thoughts and feelings look like with my values, with my nervous system, with my core desires? So these are exercises. Every time we do one of these conscious conversations, it's such a good reflection to me of the work to go back and do. And while I think I'm better at it in some areas than others, there's certainly areas I want to be more radically authentic and curious about. And I'd love to kind of hear from you guys too in the chat of, is there an area in life where, you know, you've got some work to do, that you may be living aligned with either unrealistic expectations, somebody else's expectations, whatever the case might be. Back to that health thing, y'all, so now that I am in this decade of my 40s and my body is radically changing and I don't recognize who I am some days, I'm getting to learn her and all of her ups and downs and the things that come along with shifting hormones. I find myself really looking back on that time in my 30s when I was in really great shape and I did not appreciate it then at all, and trying to be back there. So I have an expectation of being someone I am no longer. And even though that can be helpful inspiration for me, I don't think that it's healthy inspiration at all times, because it means I'm not meeting myself fully where I am today and giving myself that love and acknowledgement and encouragement from the place I stand. Instead, there's the shame of, I can't believe I'm not there. And that's not good for my mental health or my physical well-being. So that is my commitment. I'm going to work on what that looks like. And I hope you join me in the conversation. I'll start a conversation thread where we can share more about what resonated with us in this conscious conversation, this conscious topic. As a reminder, we do these every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. As you know, you can join us from wherever you are in the world and listen in. I'm so grateful that you started your Tuesday here. So big love to everybody. Go do something that feels radically aligned with you today.